Here is my college football playoff bracket for week 10. We've had a lot of chaos in these first 9 weeks of college football. Texas has 2 losses and is a combined 2 or 3 or 4 plays away from having 4. Penn State and Clemson have 4 losses. And Georgia Tech, BYU. These are all teams that are undefeated, which is just crazy. So let me show you my playoff bracket as it stands right now. So I think Memphis wins the American. Before I continue, liking the video, watching the video all the way through, and commenting your thoughts down below are the best ways to support the channel, as they help push me into the algorithm, help me to receive a larger paycheck that I can use to reinvest in producing elite analysis for you all. Subscribing to the channel, hitting the notification bell, sharing the video around, and supporting us in other ways that you can find out via the description are other awesome ways to support our operation at College Football with Sam. We are becoming the best. We want to be the best. Thank you all for. It'll come down to Memphis or Tulane, I think, who wins the American. Maybe USF. They still have an outside chance. The champion of the American will be the G5 representative in the playoff. I think that's Memphis as of right now. For the 11th seed, I have Vanderbilt going 10-2. I have them losing to Texas, but beating everyone else. And therefore, they get in the playoffs. Pretty historic to have Vanderbilt with a 10-2 record reach the college football playoff. At 10th, I have Miami at 11-2. I have them winning out, reaching the ACC championship game, where I have them playing Georgia Tech, who's my 7th seed, who will be rematching with Miami in the playoffs. I think Tech is a bad matchup for Miami, especially the first time they play. So I have Tech winning that game, bouncing back from a loss to Georgia. At the 9 seed, I have Ole Miss at 11-1. I think they win out. Texas Tech, the 8 seed, I have them also winning out, winning the Big 12 and getting their due to tiebreakers. I have them beating Cincinnati in the Big 12 championship game, who would be left out. But if they won, you could see a lot of chaos where maybe 11-2 Tech gets in over, say, Vandy, and Cincy gets the automatic berth. For my 7 seed, we already talked about Georgia Tech. 6 seed, I have 11-1 Oregon winning out. I probably have a lot of teams, too many teams winning out, but I am going with it because of how outside of the SEC, a lot of the other conference slates are weakening. So the Big Ten, their November slate outside of the game and Iowa, Oregon, and much of Oregon's remaining schedule is pretty bad. And I think Oregon's a really good team. So I have them winning out. Georgia, I have winning out. They're my 5 seed at 11-1. So you have Memphis, Georgia, Ole Miss, Texas Tech, Vanderbilt, Oregon, Miami, Georgia Tech is your first round games. That's a pretty entertaining slate. And then for the first round buys, I have SEC runner-up Texas A&M as the 4 seed. I have Ohio State as the Big Ten runner-up at 12-1, the 3rd seed. I have Alabama, the SEC champion, as the 2 seed, and Indiana at number 1. Number 1. 13-0, Big Ten champs. So that is my playoff bracket as of right now. I do have some of these teams that, so like Ohio State losing to Indiana, for example. I think right now Ohio State is better than Indiana, but going off of current trends, Indiana is outperforming. They're outperforming everyone. And at this point, because there's so much chaos and it's too hard to predict, I'm kind of going off of what I see from the trends. So what I see from the trends is Indiana is getting better and better in the power ratings at a rate that no one else is really matching up with. So don't know how sustainable that is, and that's baked into my playoff predictions that you'll see here. Don't know if they're going to win at all, but that's what I have as of right now. That's also why I have Texas Tech winning out, even though they have a loss in Big 12 play, and they have some tough games coming up to where if they lose one of those, they'll be out. So I'm trying not to predict too much chaos here, because that could make the playoff bracket extremely messy and even unrealistic. There's a very good chance this is wrong, but I'm doing it for fun. So let's look at the quarterfinal matches. I believe Georgia Texas Tech, Oregon, and Georgia Tech all win. So all the home teams win. Miami would be the most likely team to pull off the upset. Same with Ole Miss, but I think Tech would destroy Ole Miss at the lines of scrimmage. I believe that Georgia Tech's ability to shorten games and Miami's limited offense would help Georgia Tech, especially at home, to beat Miami in another close game. They also have the coaching edge. Oregon beating Vandy and Georgia beating Memphis are pretty self-explanatory. So we have Georgia playing A&M, Texas Tech playing Indiana, an Oregon-Ohio State rematch from the Rose Bowl, and Georgia Tech playing Alabama. The Alabama and Ohio State bowl locations would probably be flipped. Alabama would probably have the Sugar Bowl. Ohio State would probably have the Orange Bowl, but I can't imagine they're, since one's in Louisiana, the other's in Florida, Alabama's closer to both of them than Ohio State. It wouldn't provide that much of a difference, honestly. But those are the quarterfinal matchups that I'm projecting. I have Ohio State beating Oregon. At one point, I thought that Oregon would outpace Ohio State and these other teams at the top. I don't think that way anymore because I have seen enough sketchy things from Oregon and enough limitations on their passing offense where I need to see them win out, even though I'm predicting them to. I need to see them win out in a certain style before I put them back in that Tier 1A. Right now they're in Tier 1B with A&M, who I have losing to Georgia. This is mostly a coaching thing, as I think A&M right now is actually better than Georgia, but I trust Kirby Smart, and I think they will get some things figured out as the season goes on. So a little bit of projection there in favor of the Bulldogs. Just trust in Kirby Smart, even though I like what A&M could do to Georgia and what they provide in that game. It's a little bit similar to Ohio State over Oregon. I think Oregon could match up well with Ohio State in a lot of ways, and Oregon is caught up with Ohio State compared to where they were last year. But I've seen Day coach against Lanning twice, and he is a better coach than Lanning. So with the bye, I especially give Ohio State that edge there, and then Georgia, I like Kirby Smart over Elko, and think that with that game with Memphis, they'd be able to get some juice. Not exactly completely consistent reasons as to why I'm picking those results, but hey, results in college football aren't always consistent or make sense. Alabama would smoke Tech. I think Tech would have a fantastic season regardless, but Alabama's much more talented. They'd be taking Tech pretty seriously. Indiana wouldn't smoke Texas Tech quite as badly as Alabama would Georgia Tech, but I think Indiana would win decisively. And in both of those games, the 2 seed and the 1 seed would probably have some backups playing late in the fourth quarter. And that helped me decide who the semifinal results would be, or what the semifinal results would be, and who the national title participants would be. I think Alabama would beat Georgia. To this degree, there's been nothing that has shown me Indiana is worse than Georgia, really anywhere. Indiana has the better players at this point. Do they have the better depth? No, especially in theory, but in practice, they have the better players. On paper, they are the better team. They're better coached, I would argue, and that's saying something because Smart's one of the best in the business. At this point, I'm going to roll the die with really either Indiana or Ohio State is who I think the two best teams are. Analytically, they're separating themselves a bit. I went with Indiana here over Georgia in part because I don't think Tech would give them a 60-minute game, while A&M would give Georgia a 60-minute game. Indiana would come in here more rested. They already are ahead of Georgia by enough to where I could give them benefit of the doubt and assume that holds. Alabama and Ohio State is a similar story. Ohio State would have to play Oregon and then Alabama. Alabama would have to play Georgia Tech and then Ohio State. So who will likely get more rest entering the game? Alabama. It's very close. Very, very, very close. I think that game ultimately would decide who wins it all, because I have Indiana, Ohio State, and Alabama right now as my top 3, and I think at the end of the year that will be the top 3. If Ohio State beats Alabama, they would win it all because I don't think that they would lose to Indiana twice because they have some favorable matchups over Indiana. Indiana loves to run a lot of zone defensively. I would trust Julian Sain and those receivers to tear that apart. Alabama, with DeBoer and with their secondary, which I think is more talented than Indiana's, I believe would be better suited to face off against that Ohio State team. And the fact that they have to play Tech, who I'd assume they would be beating handily by halftime or early third quarter, while Ohio State and Oregon would be a war that could go to overtime. Rest would go with Alabama, and special teams. Special teams could decide that game too. Not exactly as confident in that with Indiana and Georgia, although both of their special teams are better than both of Alabama and Ohio State special teams units. So 1 seed versus 2 seed, and all the seeds are top 5 in the semifinals. So that's a different thing from last year's 12-team playoff. That's in part due to the changes as to who gets the first round buys. My national champion in this scenario is going to be Indiana. I'm going to roll the dice with it. Again, this could very well be wrong. I think Indiana is on pace to becoming that number 1 team at the end of the year, but that's an opinion I just formed this week. Last week I thought it was Alabama. The year before that, or the week before that, I thought it was Ohio State. Right now I have Ohio State as number 1. Just think that at the end of the year, it's not as certain as some would think that they're going to have the championship. We'll see how all of this works out. Some teams that could make it before we finish this segment that I didn't place here. Michigan. I can't pick them to beat Ohio State right now. Last week I could, but the Michigan State team showed me enough flaws where I'm bouncing back. That's a 50-50 game for me right now. If it weren't a rivalry and if it weren't at home for Michigan, I think Ohio State would win pretty decisively. But given the history of that game recently and the fact that Michigan is projected to be Ohio State's toughest opponent of the regular season, I don't know. So I'm going back and forth there, but as of this week, I'd pick Ohio State to win that game. If Michigan wins, they're certainly in the playoffs, even if they go to Indy and lose by 50 to Indiana. They probably would still be in. Maybe not in that case, but it's possible. Texas. Texas is another team where if they put everything together that they've shown me, so at times they've had an elite defense, Manning at times has looked good. Against Ohio State, their offensive line for the most part looked good. If they put all of that together, they could win out and they could be in the playoffs and then be a very dangerous team. But until I see that happening, I can't pick that. I have them going, I think, 8-4 as of right now. You also have Cincinnati, Utah, BYU, and Louisville, who I picked them to lose some games that are chaos games. If they win some of those games I'm projecting them to lose, they'll certainly be in the playoffs and could even host some games. It's absolutely incredible that BYU's undefeated and that Louisville's in a position to potentially go 11-1. This is what makes college football incredible. That's my Week 10 college football playoff bracket. Expect this to be wrong. And expect changes next week after we see plenty of these teams play and I can recalibrate and just turn the nozzle or the knob a little bit. Thanks for watching this video. Make sure if you haven't already to like the video, subscribe to the channel, hit the notification bell, comment your analysis and thoughts down below so I can reciprocate my thoughts with you in the comment section, and check out anything on these end screens that are up here. Whether it's a recommended video or playlists for teams that I'm talking about in a preview, prediction, or a reaction, make sure to hit the notification bell on those, scroll through them, and watch any suggested videos if you are interested. Thank you for helping College Football with Sam become the best and the biggest college football brand and channel on YouTube and other social media platforms. We will reach that one day because of your support.